DJ and PK. PK enjoying a little vacation this week. Joined right now by Stephen Nesbitt, though. He writes for The Athletic, and he just wrote, I don't know, Stephen, what was that, 10,000 words? 15,000 words? How long was that?
You know what? If you know a writer like me, every first draft is probably like 4,000 words, and it has to get chopped down to about 3. So I think it ended around 3,000.
Okay. I thought it was a long, comprehensive piece. And PK and I have been doing this radio show for more than 20 years. We've been very fortunate. We've beaten the odds. And we have had people like you writing stories like you on. It is a niche within journalism, stories that are well-known locally, but are not known at all nationally. So someone locally reads this story, man, if you've been paying attention, you might know 100% of the info, but you almost certainly know 80 or 90%. But for the people nationally, and they know 10 or 20%. they just don't know that much. And you brought it all together in one place. So I'm curious, had you had a lot of experience covering or writing about teams and issues in this state, or did you come in as a blank slate and have to figure all of this out?
No, I came in as a blank slate. So I'm from Michigan. I live over in New England now. I had not been to Salt Lake City or Utah before. So I was coming in this from I guess first and foremost, from a baseball perspective. I've written extensively about MLB expansion. I've been to Montreal and to Nashville and to Portland and to Orlando and these other cities hoping to get an expansion city. And so when Utah sort of came online and seemed to have such a put together package and what Major League Baseball would be looking for, then I wanted to get on the ground and sort of do a similar story that I'd done the other cities and say, okay, why does this make sense? Why would it not make sense? And then the more I looked at it, the more I said, well, I think from a national perspective, I think a lot of people don't realize all that has been going on in Salt Lake City. People generally think the average sports fan knows it as the Jazz town. They may have heard there's an NHL team there now. They know that Winter Olympics were there once upon a time. They may or may not know they're coming back. But to me, it felt like an opportunity to write a story that was more about the larger sports ecosystem and the way that has evolved in Utah, rather than just focus on MLB expansion. Because to be honest, the interesting part of MLB expansion stories at this stage is like, what more do they have to do to be ready? And does it make sense or does it not make sense? And for Utah, those didn't feel like compelling questions to me. The questions of what do they need to do to be ready, I could answer very quickly. And can it work? Well, it's the same answer as with any of these other cities. There appears to be support. You'd think it would work, and there are some questions, but not so many that I felt like it deserved to be the whole story.
I thought you hit on one thing that Utah is going for it, that Utah has really no control over, but things work out the way they work out, and it turns out I think this is a major advantage for Utah. And you mentioned this partway through the article, is the fact that it won't cannibalize another fan base. A lot of these cities, especially you get in the eastern third half of the U.S., they're so close together that fans in one market are following somewhere else. I lived and worked in Sacramento for a while, and the Bay Area teams don't really want teams in Sacramento because they know people are driving down from Sacramento to the games. And I did it, and tons of my coworkers did it, my friends did it. I mean, you could drive to a Niner game and see all these people in the car, and in Utah, you're not cannibalizing a fan base, and that means money in an owner's pocket. So I think that's one of the best things that Utah is going for it.
Yeah, they're part of this whole conversation is that this all needs to go through the 30 existing MLB owners in the league office, and it needs to be okay with enough of them for it to pass. And so if you look at Portland, it has a lot of things going for it. I've been on the ground. I've heard the vision. I've heard the dream. It makes a lot of sense to me as well. But they're sort of right up next to Seattle's market, and Seattle wouldn't be so excited about that. Atlanta has Nashville close by. If you think about Charlotte, that's not far from Atlanta. So you're right. The closer things are bunched together, the more problematic it becomes. And this does sort of fit one of those geographic gaps.
You did a good job of talking to politicians. You actually started the story with a politician on a chair, which didn't surprise any of us because, Mayor Erin Mendenhall isn't that tall, and she would stand on a chair to get to something up on a map. Wasn't surprising at all, but it was a nice visual to start the story with. The thing that surprises me being here a long time, and having been asked about this a long time, is I always thought we could get an NHL team because arenas are so multi-purpose, and the concert industry is really blown up, making them even more valuable. So that didn't seem like a stretch, but I just thought with the attitude towards taxes and tax cuts here, and the state legislature is very aggressive towards limiting taxes and providing tax cuts. I think they like to say every year that somehow they've reduced taxes. They really like to say that. I never thought that they would pay for a baseball or football stadium, but you talk to a lot of politicians, and not only is it clear they're chipping in for the baseball stadium, you got a quote that makes me think they'll chip in for an NFL team, which, man, 20 years ago, there's no way I would have predicted that the Athletic A would exist and B would have that quote.
Yeah, well, fair on both counts. I don't know how tongue-in-cheek that was said or not.
I don't think it was. I think they were, not the way politicians talk here. The way politicians talk here, I don't think that was an accident at all.
I will say that the NFL came up in like 3 different conversations.
Really?
So it wasn't just one thing, and none of them were specific plans about it, but it was. I would say as I look toward the future, I was asking, what's the next chapter if you look beyond potential MLB expansion, beyond the Winter Olympics return, was the hope of becoming a rotational, one of these permanent Winter Olympic sites, and then the potential for NFL. We didn't dive deeply into that. It seems like baseball would certainly be the first large hurdle to overcome. And you're right, so much of this is about the politics, right, in any of these cities. But that is actually one spot where Utah, from where I sit and all the conversations I've had, is clearly ahead. You look at what baseball wants, they're providing that as far as a sports and entertainment district around a baseball arena. Public-private partnership is pretty much a must for the league. Portland has that in place, but they don't yet have this anchor investor who would be leading the whole charge, and that's a massive piece of this. You look at Nashville, and they've announced a lot of things. They have a lot of branding going. They have it's a great market. It's the most popular market if you ask fans. We have a fan survey coming out later this week, and to spoil that part, Nashville is number one by a long shot. It makes a lot of sense, but they don't have any sort of public-private partnership announced, and that's a real question. Is the state and city government going to get behind this project in a way like Salt Lake City and Utah have? It really is a massive component when you look at who's going to get a team and who won't, because if nostalgia were leading this, Montreal will be having a team. Why has that fallen apart? Because the city and the province do not want to put a bunch of money back into a sporting venue for a team like the Expos to come back. So it's just basically a non-starter at this point.
If you had to rank all the cities in, would you? And it doesn't really matter if you're one or two. If 2 teams get a team, who cares if you're 1 or 2? But in the horse race right now, is Utah number 1?
Well, I think it's going to be 1 East, 1 West. So I think Nashville and Utah are 1 and 2. I'm not sure which. So I would say it this way, I guess, and this is mostly speculation, not based off of like what I'm hearing from the league office or anything. But I would say in the East, it's most likely Nashville and then Raleigh. I would say that's where the money is leading things. That's where the opportunity actually is for the league. And in the West, I would say it's Utah and then Salt Lake City and then Portland. But I think the Salt Lake City and Portland are closer than Nashville and Raleigh, if that makes sense.
So is Portland actually going to get a stadium plan together? Because it seems there's a former sports writer, Bill Oram, who used to work here at the Salt Lake Tribune, who's now a columnist at the Oregonian, and we've had him on the show a lot, and we know him from, hanging out at games and standing around waiting for press conferences to start. And we haven't talked to him in a while, but when we've had him on, he's like, the stadium plan, it isn't there yet. They don't have it.
Yeah, it does seem it has changed a lot of times. When I was there, I saw 3 different sites, 2 in the city, one right along the Willamette, and then one in the suburbs closer to the Nike facility. And the area that they've honed in now is one of those spots down on the river, but it's a much smaller developable area for that sort of sports and entertainment district around it. And so I think they would be able to work something out. The problem that they have, I think, to some degree is same as some of these other cities, is like stalled momentum. This conversation has gone on so long that you came out with renderings in 2019 or something. Mm-hmm. There's just no momentum at this point. And so were MLB about to announce in 3 months that they're ready to accept submissions, I think you'd hear a lot more anchor investors being announced. You'd hear a lot more about stadium plans. And while all that's happening, that's what kind of stands out starkly to you as from the national audience is like Utah is already building on that site. They are pretty much ready to go, building on an area right near downtown, and it's hard to find in other spots.
I have been to Portland multiple times for work, and I have family there, so I've been there for holidays and Thanksgiving and stuff like that. And so I know the area pretty well, and the downtown soccer stadium works great.
Yeah.
And the baseball on the river is brilliant. There, I don't know which side of if it would be on the downtown side or the other side, the burb side.
It would be on the downtown side.
Okay. And they got light rail. They actually have light rail on both sides of the river. And so I can absolutely see how that works, and that's where it ought to be. I've had to drive out to the suburbs, and I know that's not a great answer. But the money piece of that, I mean, they're writing. Actually, Bill just wrote a story about, hey, the NBA team wants a new arena. Is Oregon/Portland going to get this right, or are they going to lose the team? And so it's like, wow, if you're struggling with financing for a basketball arena, I can't imagine financing a baseball stadium, which would seem to put Utah in even a better spot.
Right, yeah. Like I said, there are so many. Well, Bill, first off, is going to be the authority on this, so I'll defer to him. But there are so many. There need to be so many moments in a process like this when you're balancing multiple teams arriving, teams wanting to move to the suburbs, but you want to keep them downtown. That's what I tried to wrap into this Utah story was there are so many moments where having discord between the private owners and the public officials could lead to a really rapid transformation in a bad way for a city or a market, and teams moving either just out to the suburbs and you don't have the downtown experience you want, or not getting an expansion team. A lot of things have to go right, and a lot of things have to often go right very quickly. That's what you saw happen when Ryan Smith brought the Mammoth in. There were other cities that could have gotten it, but they had sort of answers to the things they needed answers to as far as a place for them to be, and then thinking about the future and where they would put the teams next or whatever. They would retrofit the Delta Center to work out as they are doing now. So there are a lot of people who need to get on board with these projects, and I've not been to a place where I think it has such a feeling across party lines to some degree, but certainly throughout different sectors of the state and local leadership, that they are willing to do what it takes to keep teams here and to bring in more teams. And as a taxpayer, you are certainly free to disagree with that. My story wasn't really focused on that angle, but it certainly is worthy. But that's the vision, and that's what places like Salt Lake City are trying to do, whether you are stoked about money headed that direction or not.
From having an owner to the business community to the politicians to the right real estate, I get your point about a lot of things have to line up, because I grew up in San Diego. I'm literally wearing a Padre hoodie right now, and I watched the Clippers and the Chargers leave. So I get it. That stuff didn't line up, and now those teams play in L.A., period. There you go. Follow the money. Yeah,
exactly. And I've lived in markets where it feels like so I lived in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh didn't have an NBA team, and it had pro basketball back in the day, and it has college basketball, and it's a great sports market. It's a wonderful place to be. I never sensed, from a legislative perspective, from the city official perspective, that they were going to go all out to find the money somewhere in the budgets or raise funds to add an NBA team, right? And you go to a place like Salt Lake City, and it's like hits you in the face. It's like, oh, this is a place that's willing to go the extra mile to make it very clear that they want to be seen as a big city, seen as a sports city, seen as a really rising market, and they're willing to do what it takes to bring in new teams, even if sports economists out there, including people who retweeted my story yesterday and had thoughts, will tell you every time that this does not make sense for taxpayers to pay for, $900 million here, $900 million there to build sports arenas or build around them. The revenue statement or whatever the cost benefit analysis for a city like Salt Lake City maybe is different. Maybe they're just looking at something a little bit different than exactly what makes dollars and cents. It's something about what they're trying to build in the capital city and in that sports market to draw people in, to bring people back who've been there for skiing. And I think it's a really interesting ecosystem to look at.
In Texas, Arlington specifically, and in Atlanta, they built 3 stadiums in my lifetime. And they've torn down stuff for economic reasons that could have stood for another 20, 40, 50 years easily. And it could have worked, but it was real estate deals. It always comes down to real estate deals. The Battery.
People don't realize how much it is about that. Yeah. People don't realize how much it is about real estate.
I haven't been to the Battery, but PK, my co-host, is on vacation, has been, and he's like, that was spectacular. I have retweeted, it's buried somewhere in all my tweets, of San Diego before, the ballpark neighborhood before and after. The number of high-rise, I mean, it's completely gone from warehouses to high-rises. And so the tax base has changed. Now, I'm not an economist, and they're retweeting your story, so I'll take them at face value. But a big part of redeveloping North Temple here and redeveloping that spot that belonged to Rocky Mountain Power and figuring there could be growth up and down the tracks line, our light rail, that goes into downtown, I'm sure is a big part of this equation. But it's also changing the face of Utah to the entire country. And as someone who grew up in California, trust me, I've heard every possible joke. All my college roommates think that, guys, you're not writing any of these. I've heard them all. Doesn't matter. I'll hear them next time I go too.
Yeah, I've been to the Battery. The vision is very easy for people to port over to their location. So every single expansion city I've been to and group I've talked to that's trying to bring baseball to their city has gone and visited Atlanta. It is a model for everyone in baseball, and honestly, even outside of baseball, to follow. The problem, if you will, is that I went to Turner Field as a kid. I went to Turner Field as a writer. It was right downtown. It's extremely convenient. I mean, for what I was trying to do, stay downtown and get to the ballpark. And now you're out in the suburbs. It's a totally different experience. It's going to get a different segment of the population, and some of that is a feature, and some of it I think is a bug. It's a necessity for getting all that space and owning all that land, and a reason that the Braves, one of the only team who can see their books, are so profitable. They have that land around them, kind of regardless of what the team's doing. That area is going to do well and bring them a ton of money. So everyone wants to do that. And so, talking to when I go to Portland, I see the vision down on the water, but it's a much smaller area to develop around. Mm-hmm. And so when you go out to the suburbs, that's when you see the lights turn on in everyone's heads. Like, ooh, this could. I mean, we have 100 acres here. We can have so much we could build around. It's a real estate thing at that point. And Salt Lake City it is kind of shocking for someone who is out east, who's in such a developed area, to go there and say, whoa, you could have this baseball area, 100 acres, 5 minutes from the airport, 5 minutes from downtown, a couple minutes from the Delta Center. We're going to have another sports and entertainment district. And then you're 25, 30 minutes from skiing. Like, okay, I understand. Like, I understood that they were a front runner, and I'd heard good things. But when you're there, you're like, okay, I do see why this market sort of stands out in a different way. There's a proximity that the league would have to like for teams coming in, that you don't fly into Salt Lake City and then you drive, 30, 45 minutes to the hotel, and it's out in the suburbs, and that's the only time you spend. It really is, all of this is really, really close together in a way that you just don't find across the country.
You told me, Steve, that you heard 3 people mention the NFL. Did you hear anyone talk about moving the Utah State Fair Park?
No, I hadn't heard anything about that. I think I'm not super well versed in this, but so Luz Escamilla,
she represents the West Side. She's a state legislator.
Senator, yeah. She talked a lot about how for a long time there was as someone living in that area, the conversation around the Fair Park was that it was going away. It was going to be moved somewhere else, and so to her it was a sign of a good sign that when the Power District comes to that area, the plan has been to sort of develop parts of the Fair Park. And from my understanding, as we drove around there, no one was talking about it as something that could go away. So that would be much more a question for a local reporter. But everything I heard was much more about developing the buildings around it, sort of diversifying what that area does, but still featuring that as what it currently is.
So after all your trip out here and learning about the area and being here for the first time and talking to everybody, do you think that the commissioner, and you pointed out a quote we've heard often, he wants to announce expansion before he leaves in 2029. Do you think Utah is going to hear really good news about baseball expansion out of the commissioner's mouth before he leaves, before this decade is up?
my bold prediction. I think so much can change over time. There could be cities that start to really like, let's say Austin all of a sudden starts putting all their chips behind getting a team. Maybe that changes the conversation. Today, though, I don't see another market that has the boxes checked that Salt Lake City does. And going there, spending time there, hearing the vision, seeing the spots, I come away not having a lot of questions about whether baseball could work there. And so I think the league would see that as well. They want a place that doesn't have, they want to avoid what has happened in previous expansions where you maybe picked a spot that was booming but didn't end up having the support that you were hoping for in Arizona and Tampa. They need to get this one right, and it does feel like Salt Lake, but I also think Nashville, I also think Portland would be places where you'd have a pretty safe floor of having a team that does well from an attendance standpoint, with probably a smaller stadium than the classic ballparks with 50,000 or something. Small ballpark, I think the TV markets are healthy enough that they go there feeling good about it. So at this point, I think the odds are Salt Lake City, but a lot can change in the coming years when new money is announced, new ballpark plans are announced, and however long this stretch is on.
Well, the Mariners are one vote for Utah. We got that, so we got that going for us. We'll see how that plays out. Steven, we appreciate the time. Thanks for coming out here, writing the story, and hopping on the radio with us.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Steve Nesbitt writes for The Athletic. And my question about the State Fair Park was conjecture and hypothetical. I haven't heard anything, but it's just hypothetical. Hypothetic? Made up a new word. Hypothetical. You can see the argument for keeping it there, developing a little bit, and using it as a place to put more events, and especially concerts, and bring more traffic to the neighborhood. And you could also see it, kind of like the prison, which they moved to develop that site. Oh, you could develop that site. So I don't know what they'll do. I'm intrigued. Thanks to Steve for joining us. When we come back, Scott Gerard's going to San Diego. Big game, Utah State at San Diego State. One team projected to already be in the tournament, the other one on the bubble, and the conference title hanging in the balance. Scotty G's next. Stay with us.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson.
One of Adam Silver's biggest problems is that he is not consistent at all, and he sets all these crazy precedents that he doesn't live up to, or he sets a precedent he could never live up to. He can't sit there and manage Will Hardy's lineup.
If you want to say conduct detrimental to the NBA, that could be every single night in the NBA with what happens with rotations or who's available and who's not available that doesn't apply to the player participation policy. The Jazz can rest Jusuf Nurkic all they want. He's not in the player participation policy, but if suddenly the NBA says, well, that's detrimental to the NBA and we're going to fine you anyways, then this opens a can of worms that you can't enforce every night because you can't fine your teams every single night they step on the court.
Because he doesn't care about policy and never has. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Catch Jake and Ben weekdays from 10 to noon on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. PK's on vacation right now. Scotty G is packing his bags after his show today and heading to San Diego to call the Utah State-San Diego State game Wednesday night. Scotty G, good morning.
Good morning, DJ. How are you?
Big game.
Yes.
Are we at the point where people care about conference titles anymore? Because Utah State has a one-game lead over San Diego State and New Mexico, but while the Aggies are projected as firmly in the field, I just saw them as a 7 seed this morning in one of the projections. I've also seen New Mexico as the last team in, and San Diego State as one of the first 4 out after back-to-back losses to Grand Canyon and Colorado State. So is this about making the NCAA tournament, or is this about winning the Mountain West before it splits into 2 leagues and teams go their own ways?
Well, I think that's a good point. I don't think there's that emphasis, especially on a regular season conference championship like there used to be. I think it's all about how do you play the analytics game? How do you make sure that your resume looks good going into the NCAA tournament so that you don't sweat things out on Selection Sunday? I just don't think the selection committee really cares that much about a regular season title. Obviously, you want to win the conference title because that assures you a spot in the NCAA tournament. But, yeah, you're right. It doesn't feel like it matters as much as it used to.
Why has San Diego State suddenly lost these 2 games? Is there some vulnerability that can be exploited, or this is the kind of stuff that happens, and now Utah State's playing them at the worst time when they're going to be really mad and really focused because they know what's at stake?
The Grand Canyon game was a little bit of a head-scratcher because, honestly, San Diego State doesn't lose at Viejas. I mean, they're just a powerhouse. They're averaging nearly 12,000 fans a game. the Colorado State game, I've been to those weird games where Colorado State just shoots the lights out in Moby Arena, and that's essentially what happened there. But the fact that those are so each one of those on their own you can explain, but the fact that they're back-to-back, that's very un-San Diego State-like. They're still an elite defensive team, but that defense hasn't been clicking as of late. And that's with, Magoon Guath coming back in the lineup, although he only played 5 minutes in that game against Colorado State. But he played in the win against Nevada. He played in the game against Grand Canyon. So defensively, they should be a lot better than where they are right now. And they are getting healthier down the stretch. But still, this isn't – Brian Dutcher can't have a fully loaded roster every year, and I think this roster is a little bit down. They're not quite as talented as they once were. NIL and the transfer portal starting to hurt them a bit. So this isn't the powerhouse San Diego State teams that we've seen in the past, but make no mistake, Utah State's walking into a hornet's nest right now with the Aztecs losing 2 in a row and needing to fight for their lives for NCAA tournament opportunities.
How many games have you called in San Diego, and how many has Utah State won?
Okay, that's a good question. I think I've only called, I want to say maybe 6 games there because there were a couple of years where Utah State didn't make the trip. And then there was a overlap with football that I did a football game and I didn't call that game in San Diego. So I think I've only called 5 or 6, but only one win. Utah State's only won at one time there, and that was last year when Tucker Anderson got hot and hit a bunch of threes late, and Utah State overcame, I want to say, like an 18-point deficit, came back and won the game, and in a crazy-like atmosphere. So, yeah, I've only seen one win down there, and Utah State's only won one game in there since being in the Mountain West.
If I told you Utah State was going to lose this game and then win out, would you still be comfortable they won the regular season title and went to the conference tournament as a 1 seed? Or would you think maybe San Diego State runs the table and they end up sharing it?
Let's see. I've got San Diego State's schedule right in front of me. So after this one, they go at the Pit, then they go to Boise, and then home against UNLV.
You think they're going to lose again?
They're going to lose again.
Yeah.
I think there's a loss in there somewhere. So, yeah, if Utah State loses this game and wins out, I think Utah State has complete control of that regular season championship. Because that means that Utah State will have beaten New Mexico, too.
Anything you saw in the first matchup at the Spectrum that Utah State won that informs you about what has to happen in this game?
Well, you want to hope that you have been the ultimate hype guy all year for Carson Templin. And Carson Templin played probably either his best game in an Aggie uniform or his second best game in an Aggie uniform against San Diego State. Aggies were down 5 with about 10 minutes left, and Carson Templin caught fire, was getting big rebounds, ended up at that point scoring a career-high 18 points. And so if they can bottle that, then I think they've got a great chance. But here's the thing. Magoon Guath did not play. Elsie Harrington did not play for San Diego State. That was as banged up as they'd been all year long. And so now you get what appears to be at this point a fully healthy, or at least as healthy as they've been in a long time, San Diego State team playing at home in desperation. I don't know if there's a lot you can take from that game in Logan and put towards this one. I think you're seeing a much different Aztec team.
Do you think it's ultimately a 2 or 3 bid league? Because I'm looking at the projections here. Utah's actually a 7 seed both at ESPN and CBS Sports. New Mexico is the last team in at ESPN, and they're like the third of the last team in at CBS. They're clearly right on the line, and San Diego State's out in both of them. It's been a long time since this was a 2-bid league.
I know, and I don't see a path right now where they
conference tournament.
Outside
the conference tournament. Yeah.
Outside of the conference tournament, I just don't see a path with 3. And there's a lot of people out there that say it could be a 1. No, that's not going to be the case. They'll get 2 in because the Mountain West is traditionally a 2-bid league, or at least it's
a 3-bid league. It's a multi-bid league.
Yes, and so the years of having 5, like we've seen the last couple of years, obviously that's not going to happen. But there's not going to be a 1-bid league from the Mountain West this year. They'll get 2, 3 if they win the conference tournament. But honestly, this is This is not a good year for the Mountain West Conference. And the problem is the conference from top to bottom is actually better, and that's what's hurt them. They didn't get that early signature non-conference win that everybody else could feed off of and raise each other's numbers off of. So it's just they didn't play the game right. It didn't quite go the way that it normally does for the Mountain West, and they're behind the 8 ball. I actually think the conference is better from top to bottom. It's not as top-heavy as it normally is, but it's just you know how it is. Sometimes you just start cannibalizing each other and bringing everybody back down.
It's not just about getting non-conference games against other tourney teams. You want to do that. Like BYU is able to schedule Clemson, who's now projected as a 10 seed, and BYU is able to win that game. But what San Diego State did to get big games is just play the teams that nobody wanted to play. Mm-hmm. Arizona's completely loaded. Michigan's completely loaded. If they are both 1 seeds, nobody's surprised. Right now, I think they'd be surprised if they weren't both 1 seeds. And San Diego State got bludgeoned in both those games. Now you get the quad 1 game and you get that the whole strength of schedule thing. It's gonna help you out, but it doesn't have you get any quad 1 wins. And I've seen that Ohio State is out because they're 0-9 again, and obviously they get a bunch of Big Ten games against really good teams, but they're like 0-9 in quad 1 games. Oof.
Yeah, no bueno.
Right.
And this is a committee that's very analytic driven. Like there's some committees that are more eyeball test, and then there's some that are kind of a combination of both. This group loves the numbers, and there's always a little bit of turnover. 1 or 2 guys get replaced every year, but it's currently constituted. These athletic directors and coaches out there, they keep a very close eye on the tendencies of these committees. And right now, this is a group that's going to go right to the nitty-gritty net number. They're going to go right to the Ken Palms, and they're going to be like, okay, where are you at right now? That's why Utah State loses at Nevada, but their numbers didn't drop. So they stayed at 23 in Ken Palm. I still think they're 21, 22 in the net, and everybody still has them as a 7 seed. Usually you lose a game against Nevada, who's okay, but they're not great, and you would see a pretty significant drop. Well, Utah State didn't drop. They're still slotted at that 7 spot in Lenardi and all these other guys because they understand that the committee is going to look at that and say, okay, well, your computer numbers are still good. We're going to keep you where you're at.
Utah State is 24 in the net right now.
Okay.
For comparison, BYU is 19. And St. Mary's is 26, so there's another Western team that'll probably be in the tournament.
Yes.
So there you sit. Awesome. You know, when you look at San Diego State and you say the team's not as loaded, have you got any feel for how Mountain West, soon to be Pac-12 teams, are splitting up their money that they can give to players and how they're splitting it between football and men's basketball?
Yes. So right now, men's basketball is getting, if you look at San Diego State, I believe that Utah State spent more money on their basketball roster this last year than they did their football roster. I think that Bronco has come in, and I think that's going to be a little bit different next year. It's going to be a lot closer, let's just say that. UNLV, their basketball roster outspent their football roster. New Mexico football or basketball outspent. So the majority of these teams are putting more of their resources into basketball because it's easier to fund a 15-man roster than it is a 85-man roster. And so right now you're looking at a good chunk of these teams saying we can get a bigger bang for our buck on basketball than we can football. Even though football is the front porch of every university. And I think that's kind of the tendency around all of college athletics, actually, is that basketball, the market is just higher right now outside of your quarterbacks and your star players in football. Right now, the basketball market is just hopping in terms of NIL money. And so at that point, you see teams spending more. I think probably even BYU may have spent more on their basketball roster than they did their football roster last year. And I think that trend's going to continue here, at least for the foreseeable future.
So really, college sports is just like the pros because NBA players – on the whole, make more than NFL players.
Yep.
But it comes down to it's the size of the roster. You can have a lot of money, but once you start splitting it up between 53 guys in the pros and 85 guys in college, well, not like guy 53 or guy 85 is making all that money, but you get the point.
Totally.
You're still spreading it instead of across a 15-man roster.
Yep.
So it's much more lucrative to be a basketball player than a football player.
Parents, teach your kids how to hit a 3.
Scotty, there's just so many clever things to say, but we'll just let him go. I know.
I try to make things fun for you.
Yeah, there you go. All right, well, we'll see if you have fun in San Diego. Big game for a Utah State team that looks like it's on track for about a 7 seed. We'll see how that plays out. You got this one. You got New Mexico at home, so the top 3 teams in the league all still have to play each other.
Yes.
Utah State's going to San Diego State. San Diego State's going to New Mexico, and New Mexico will finish the season in the Spectrum.
As you mentioned wisely yesterday on our Ultimate Aggie podcast that you can find at KSLSports.com, or you can also find on your podcasting platform of choice, just search Ultimate Aggie. Everybody on the schedule for Utah State still has teeth, and that is 1,000% correct. There's no Air Force, no San Jose State for the Aggies down the stretch.
Scotty, do you get any beach time in San Diego? How's the weather? I haven't checked.
I have not checked either. I am leaving tonight after the show, so I won't get there until about 7 or 8. And then tomorrow we'll do the show and get all prepped up for the game and then leave at 6 a.m. on Thursday. So no beach.
Yeah, it's all work, nose to the grindstone, no free time whatsoever. That's his story, and he's sticking to it.
1,000%. And for Nate and everybody else listening right now, I won't even think about doing anything fun whatsoever. It's all work, 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 work.
73 degrees Tuesday, 70 degrees Wednesday, 70 in sunshine. There will be some clouds Tuesday.
Oh,
But you'll be getting there dark.
Heaven forbid that we have clouds on a 70-degree day.
I know, right?
We'll find a way to survive.
All right. Thanks, Scotty G.
Hey,
enjoy the trip.
best.
Safe travels.
Will do.
All right. DJ and PK, there's Scott Garrard. He'll be on the air today. Catch him from noon to 3 right here on The Zone. Bob Casper, host of Real Golf Radio, is going to join us at 9 o'clock. They're going to turn the PGA Tour upside down. What are they doing? It's like a metronome. I like it, and it's going to get messed with. In the words of Tiger Woods, a few eggs are going to be broken. We'll get to that with Bob at the top of the hour. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Your Utah Jazz next. Stay with us.
Whirls around and down. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone is your exclusive home of the Utah Jazz. And we want to send you to the Delta Center to see the Jazz in action. Listen every Tuesday for the Jazz Ticket Tuesday Sounder at 30 past the hour, every hour, all day long. And if you're caller number 12, you'll be on your way to an upcoming game.
Buy one, you'll get one free.
It's Jazz Ticket Tuesday, every Tuesday throughout the NBA season on your radio home for the Utah Jazz. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Join Scotty G Thursday, noon to 3, RGS Exteriors, 4235 Farm Road in West Jordan. Your Utah Jazz were beaten in Houston as scheduled last night, 125-105. The most disappointing part of the game, I thought, by far, was the injury to Vince Williams Jr. I was intrigued by him, trying to figure out what this roster is going to look like off the conversation with David Locke, and then subsequently he was wondering, and we only had one segment, he was wondering what PK and I were thinking. We were all texting back and forth. And Vince Williams Jr., I just saw as a huge wild card. His size and athleticism is immediately intriguing. What can they get out of him? And we've seen multiple players come to Utah, and this staff figures out how to get a little more out of them. Now, they figured out how to get a little more out of them in a situation where they weren't winning, so maybe they had a little freedom they wouldn't have if the pressure's on to win 50 games or win a playoff series or whatever. But nonetheless, the uptick in the players they've drafted, but they brought in veterans. They've brought in a few veterans who have really flourished. Nurkic would be an example, this year. Chris Dunn would be another example, and there are others. And so I was really intrigued, and now that just all goes on hold. Maybe it just stops. I don't know what they do. They've got an option for $2.5 million. If they really like him, they could build some goodwill, pick up the option, and he could get paid while he rehabs. On the other hand, they might need that $2.5 million for a starter. So they might want to pocket that and think, we need that. In which case, well, either way, it's a horrible injury. We haven't heard officially what happened to him, but it was a grotesque hyperextension, and it is very hard to believe he did not tear his ACL. He was in obvious pain. We saw the shot on the Peacock streaming of him being carried off the floor. It was horrible. You had to look away. It was terrible, and it was totally unnecessary. It was a breakaway dunk that there's no reason to veer to your left and throw a shoulder into him. I mean, that's a foul. For starters, that didn't get called. And then it's a dunk, and meanwhile, you're lying on the ground over there, and you've got a torn ACL probably. terrible moment, and it doesn't look like anything's going to come of that. So it'll just be interesting to see what the Jazz do with him going forward. He had a chance to be an intriguing piece. Maybe he will be. And maybe in 2028 in the playoffs, will this all be water under the bridge? But that was a bad moment in that game early in the second quarter, and that was really, I think, the most important thing there. Also, earlier in the day, they announced Nurkic is out for the season. He's undergoing nose surgery. He is a free agent this summer. And we got a lot of people posting about this on Facebook and Twitter. You go to David DJ James. You go to our Facebook page, DJ and PK. Ethan, for the right price, he'd be a good backup to Kessler. Shelley, if it is possible, I'd like to see him return. A lot of people have loved Nurkic. He seems to love being here. His teammates like him, and he racked up 3 triple-doubles, 2 of which were more impressive than the third one. Third one he got in garbage time in a blowout. But nonetheless, for a team, I couldn't even name the last 3 triple-doubles. What would it take, like 20 years, Jacques? What do you think, find 3 triple-doubles?
Oh, jeez, yeah. It'd be,
right?
Yeah.
It'd be forever.
Well, okay, we had one. Karl Malone there's a long break between Karl Malone having one and then the next one happening, which was almost a 2-decade-plus
run.
So, yeah.
So to find the last 3, you'd have to go back forever, right? And he went out and rattled off 3 in a row, and he likes it here. He's been a bright spot in the 4th year of a rebuild, which is just wearing people out. But he's making $19 million, and people don't usually stay with teams for big pay cuts. If they take big pay cuts, they usually move somewhere else. And I don't see how he's going to get $19 million again. But could he get somewhere between $5 and $10 million? And can the Jazz afford that for a backup center? I think they need 2 perimeter, certainly a guard who has. I think they need 2 perimeter guys who have playoff experience, and one of them has got to be a guard and has got to be capable of running the offense for long stretches. A Mike Conley type acquisition. Now you got to find him at the right price. Easier said than done. If their goal next year is to be in the middle of the league, I think they've already made enough roster moves. I'm pretty confident they can get to the middle of the league. That doesn't seem like a big ask at this point. Easy for me to say sitting here, they got to do the work. But nonetheless, I think they'll get there. But if the goal is to open the championship window, you've got Markkanen signed for 3 years, and you've got Jackson signed with 3 for a player option with the 4th. You've got to target, how do you win playoff series in 27, 28, and 29? I like some of these young guys. I may like them more than other people. But if the goal is to win playoff series in 27, 28, 29, that's a big ask. And I just can't see these young guys being in the top 7 or 8 rotation. Now, maybe they're guy 9, 10, 11. Maybe Collier can be the 4th guard. You've got Ace Bailey, and you've got Keontae, and you've got Collier, and I want to bring in a veteran. Like it matters what I want, but just play along like it matters what I want. I want to bring in a veteran. And so Collier could be the 4th guard playing 10 to 15 minutes a night, more when one of the other 3 misses. I can see that. I think that the squeeze is really on for Filipowski. I don't see how he gets minutes. I don't see how he stays and develops. I expect that when the Jazz go out and acquire 2 or 3 players, that he's in one of the trades to get them. That seems most likely to me. Because they went out and they got Jaren Jackson Jr., who I think is a 4. Maybe they'll ask him to be the backup 5. And if the other team's going small and they're going small, it could work. But I think they probably need a backup 5 that's got some beef. So when they're out there against somebody else whose backup has got some beef, they're not in a mismatch and getting guys in foul trouble. So I expect they add that to the roster. And that Jackson plays most of his time at the 4. Markkanen, I can see playing the rest of the minutes at 4 and some at 3. And you can play Ace Bailey at 3. And the difference between a 2 and the 3 is pretty much non-existent these days in the NBA. I think they got to find somebody who plays that role. And they got to find a true guard who can handle the ball against pressure in a playoff situation and hit big shots. And they're going to need some added guys who've been there because they got so little playoff experience on this roster. Jaren Jackson Jr. The young guys don't have it. Markkanen doesn't have it. Obviously, Keontae George and Ace Bailey, who we expect to be playing big minutes. Walker Kessler, we expect to be playing big minutes. If they've only got a 3-year window here and they're really going to try to push the envelope, I think they got to bring some vets in. So I don't see how they're going to be able to pay Nurkic to be a backup center. DJ and PK, we're taking a break. When we come back, Tiger Woods has big plans. The PGA Tour is going to look very different. Scarcity. Taking weeks off in the middle of the summer, which they're also planning to own. All right, we'll talk about that plan next. Bob Casper joins us. Stay with us.